Guess what? Everyone is rich. Everyone is rich. I've always told you, how many kidneys do you have? You have 2 kidneys. How many kidneys do you need? You have 1. So what's the second kidney doing there? So many of you, you have 2 kidneys now. You are looking at me now, 2 kidneys. I say you are poor. And 1 kidney will probably bring you, maybe, I don't know how much the second kidney. That's not my business. But let's assume $100,000. Assumption. So that means you have $100,000 sitting there inside you, and you are looking for 50,000 to pay for your shop. So think about it. That's how you have gifts, you have talent, you have potentials on the inside of you. Your gold is tied to your gift. Your treasure is tied to your talent. Your profit is tied to your potential. So on the inside of you, there is something you have that you can exchange for what you need. Do you know that when you go to work, you say, I'm working, and they pay you salary. Now, when you go to that work, what do you give them? You give them your time, you give them your energy, you give them your knowledge, you give them your skill. What do they give you at the end of the month? They pay you for those things that you're giving to them. So you are using what you have to get what you want. And that's why we need to have that understanding, because a lot of people have put a barrier between them and their miracle. And I've taught you in this house before, I've said it over and over again, what you need is what you need. It's a principle. What you need is what you need. If you need a car, stop praying for money to get a car. Ask for the car. If you need a house, stop praying for money to get a house. Ask for the house. If you need a job, you don't pray for money to get a job. So why are you praying for money to get a car? If you need a job, you pray for money to get a job. You say, Lord, I need a job. So why do you now pray for money when you need a car? If you need a job, you pray for a job. If you need a wife, you pray for money to get a wife. If you need a husband, you pray for money to get a husband. If you need a child, you pray for money to get a child. So why are you praying for money to get a car? Who told you? It's because of the software that has been put on the inside of you. You now think that you need money, whereas what you have, you can use. You have tangible and intangible resources that are available for you to exchange for what you need. So I'm going to give you an homework. Like I said, when we started, there's going to be a lot of assignments. So if you don't have the manual, you need to get the manual, like I've said over and over again. So now make a list of 10 things that you need. Make a list of 10 things that you need. 10 things. And then make a list of 10 things you have that you can exchange for it. So let me help you. For instance, now, I need a job. So if you need a job, so what do you have that you can exchange for a job? I have time. What do you have that you can exchange for a job? I have experience. What do you have that you can exchange for a job? I have qualification. What do you have that you can exchange for a job? I have skill. Are you getting it now? So list what you need and sit down and begin to think. Mariando Koshede. And the Spirit of God begin to inspire you, and you begin to realize that thing you are looking for, you already have what it takes to get it. So all you need to do is go through this process, and it will help you. So let's move on. So when the trade by barter began to function, which is what many of us, when you go into economic classes, you study economics, they'll teach you more about trade by barter, trade by barter, trade by barter. But as at this time, when they started going to this trade by barter stuff, energy and skill has been from the beginning, and the energy and skill is still there, but people now started losing sight of energy and skill. But there was limitation. Trade by barter came with limitation. It came with some limitation, and it was this limitation in the trade by barter dimension that led to the next level of evolution that brought in what everyone now knows as currency. So what do we see? Number one, value differential. The first limitation was value differential. So what does that mean? Now, so for instance, now in trade by barter, because we're in an agrarian age, someone probably has tomatoes and somebody else had, corn. So one person brings tomato, the other person brings corn, and the person bringing tomato is saying, if I give you 1 dozen of tomatoes, I need a plastic of corn. And the person bringing corn says, what do you mean by that? How can you give me just 1 dozen for a plastic? I need 10 dozens of tomato for 1 plastic. I said, no, tomato is very important now. 1 dozen is enough. I said, no, my corn is very important. So the value of what everybody had was higher to them, and most of the time there was no agreement on the value of people's products. And that became a problem, because somebody believes that yam is more valuable than plantain, somebody else believes that plantain is more valuable than beans, somebody else believes that beans is more valuable than gari, and because of that, problem one. Problem two, the need differential. There was a differentials in their need. So for instance now, if you need beans and then you have yam, so you bring yam to the market and you want to exchange yam for beans. So you need beans, you have yam, but the person that has the beans does not need yam. So you say, sorry, I don't need yam. If you can give me plantain, that's what I need. I don't have plantain. So you have to first of all go and use your yam to look for somebody that has plantain and needs yam. Are you getting it now? So you go through that. By the time you now get the plantain, before you now come back to the person that has beans. So because of that differentials of need, it was becoming cumbersome and complex. Number three, the mobility limitation. There was no transportation. It was, when you hear, necessity is the mother of invention. It was during this agrarian age that transportation came in. They started by walking, then they were moving carts, then they started using horses and animals, and they had horse carriages. Before you know it, they started talking about cars. Before you know it, trains. Before you know it, they started having canoe and boats. So all these transportations came as a result of how do we transport our farm produce from the farm to the different cities and the different villages? How do we transport what we have to where the product is needed? So it was that transportation and mobility limitation that brought forth the emergence of different transportation and brought forth different kinds of stuff. But at the same time, it was a major challenge. And then number four, the storage challenge. How do I store banana for 3 years? How do I store potatoes for 1 year? How do I store tomatoes for 7 years? It was becoming a difficult problem. So as a result of all these different problems, people now started thinking. They started thinking, why? Because now they are moving to the next level of evolution. Now, this next level of evolution is what brought us into the third dimension that we call the industrial age or the industrial era. So in the industrial age came as a result of, how do I keep these potatoes for 1 year? If I cut it and I fry it or I roast it, then I preserve it, then it can stay longer. Tomatoes, if I squeeze it, I turn it to liquid, it becomes tomato paste, it becomes tomato puree. This orange, if I squeeze it, I can put preservative, it becomes orange juice. I can keep it for 2 years instead of the orange spoiling after 3 months. So as a result of this dimension of evolution, we got into the industrial age. Are you seeing how this thing works now? But guess what? Don't forget that during the time of famine, people were slaves on the farm. You know, they are brought slaves and they were all working on the farm. So the energy and skill that people had during the hunting age, when the evolution moved to agrarian, some people left that realm and upgraded themselves. So they reskilled to ensure that the energy is now redirected at farming. The skill is now into farming. Now, at this next level of evolution again, they now started thinking, okay, now this energy that we have been using to farm, we now have to redirect this energy to being educated and getting the understanding of how to function in that next level. And they now began to develop new skills. And these new skills that they began to develop was the skill that is required, because the skill they needed on the farm is not needed in the factory. And what happened at this point is the fact that many of the people that were on the farm, they now started picking the ones that were smart, the ones that were quick with their head, quick in thinking, and they gathered them together. It was at this point that education started. So schools were not set up so that you can be rich. No. Schools were set up so that those that were farming slaves can be trained on how to function in the factory. So the purpose of education was to help people to redirect their energy and to give them the skills that is required for them to continue to slave, but no more on the farm. They now slave in the factory. So when they were in the farm, they were wearing short knicker. They now brought them into the factory. They gave them overall. So you are still a slave. That's why you call it civil servant or public. You are still a slave, still servant. But you are now a servant in the factory instead of being a servant in the field. Are you getting it now? So don't think that, oh, I go to school. No. Schools were not set up to help you. It was set up to prepare you and to equip you to function at that next level. And because of derivative, what's a derivative? A derivative is what you derive from something. So from orange, we have orange juice. Orange. So orange juice is a derivative of orange. From apple, you have apple juice. You have apple puree. So apple juice is a derivative of what? Of apples. So that derivative, that things that are derived from, is what brought us to this level. But now look at it now. Are you ready for this? Are you sure you're ready? At the first level of evolution, they were running after what was on the ground. The animals, the squirrels, the antelope that was diminishing. At the second level of education, they were functioning with the ground itself. They were farming and the ground was producing. But guess what? At this third level, they have gone to the next dimension. They are now dealing with what is under the ground. Now, under the ground, we have crude oil. Under the ground, gold, coal, diamond, diverse minerals, and precious stone. They have always been under the ground when people were hunting, but they did not know. So what is in you that you don't know? They did not know. While they were farming and making money from the ground, gold was under the ground. Crude oil was under the ground. Many of you don't know, but when crude oil was first discovered, they called it Black Death. Black Death. They saw crude oil and said, this is the black thing is coming from under the ground, it's going to kill all of us. So the same crude oil that later became what? Because they did not have understanding. So they are now going after what is under the ground. So you need to go below, to go into your life. Because when God created you in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, and the Lord God formed man out of the dust of the earth and breathed into man the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So you were brought forth from the dust of the earth. That's why if you can go and do this experiment. When you get home now, you want to sleep, go to the bedroom, have your bath, clean yourself, and then make your bed, white bed sheets. And then from the bathroom, go straight to the bed and sleep naked on the bed. When you wake up the next morning, you will see sand on your bed. Where did the sand come from? You are a sand. You die daily, whether you know it or not. You die daily. So why? Because you are from the earth. So that therefore means that if you go deep into you, the same way that there was crude oil under the ground and they were walking on the ground without knowing that there was crude oil, there was gold. In the same way, there is deposits inside you. There are potentials, there are gifts, there are dimensions inside you. If you dig deep enough, if you dig deep enough, something will come out of you that will transform your life. Listen to me. When you want to plant corn, what do? You take your finger, open the soil, put the corn there, cover it up. Few days later, it begins to grow. Few months later, you are eating corn. But if you plant corn, you can only eat it once. And after a few months, corn is gone. To eat another corn, you have to plant corn again. So the depth you go to plant a corn is different from the depth you will go to if you want to bury a dog. If you want to bury a dog, you go deeper. But the depth you go to bury a dog is different from the depth you go to bury a human being. These are levels of depth. But if you want to get water, what do? To dig a well, you go deeper. But guess what? There's even a limitation to the well. To dig a borehole, what do? You go deeper again. To get to crude oil, you go deeper. The problem with many of us is we are too shallow. We are too shallow, mentally lazy, physically lazy. You are not ready to think deep. You are not ready to spend time in meditation, in prayer, in understanding, so that God can take you deep until tomorrow come me. You will touch water and you will touch some depths of God. So we came into the industrial age, and at this point, number one, education came. Number two, banking came. It was at this point that they set up banks. Why? Because they have gone through